Hi, this is your host Sapnil Bhartiya, and welcome to our 2022 predictions series. And today we have with us Michael Cote, developer advocate at VMware. Michael, it's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now it's time for you to grab your crystal ball and share with us what predictions you have for this year.
In the last several years, I think we've all, and you've talked with many people, seen Kubernetes finally, they don't like it when you say this, the thought lords of Kubernetes, but it's won. It's what everyone wants to use instead of the alternatives. And I think now, I think there's enough of a mainstream usage of Kubernetes, definitely more than mainstream interest. But when you look at the amount of workloads that people like Gartner and other estimate that are running on Kubernetes, I don't know, if you kind of fudge it up a little bit to account for errors and whatever, it's something like 15 or 20% of workloads globally, which is to say applications seem to run on Kubernetes, maybe. And so I think, I forget my diffusion of innovation curve, but what that means to me is it's in the early majority, more or less. And I think the only reason you run Kubernetes is to run applications on top of it. And those applications tend to be developed by software developers. And I think the early indications and what we've always known with Kubernetes is it's not really built for application developers. And so I think what you're starting to see is a lot of application developers love a challenge, but also they would really like to just work on their applications. And so, some of my colleagues like to call it a developer crisis or something like that. I don't think developers are pulling their hair out or anything like that, but there's a lot of work that can go into not necessarily Kubernetes itself, but all of the delicious packing around Kubernetes, the tooling and the ways of using it, the packagings and all of that can make it better for developers to use. And indeed, I think that's what you see. We do that a lot at Tanzu, but out in the community and also people I talk with, they're very focused on developers having an easier time in Kubernetes. So I think that's what we'll see a lot of this year is more of focusing on, you could call it developer productivity, but just making it so developers don't have to think or worry about Kubernetes so much and just get the benefits of it. And, a part of what will be fun to see personally for me, since it's been about 7 years since I've worked in the Cloud Foundry world and at Pivotal and now at Tanzu, is a lot of the things that we're starting to see in the Kubernetes developer world. It's great that we have kind of proven this out in Cloud Foundry and other areas, the ways of working and kind of what developers want. And I'm seeing more and more of that kind of thinking pulled into the Kubernetes world. Like, for example, if you look at, Spotify has this project called Backstage. And what's really interesting about that project for developers is that, it understands, to personify it, it understands what developers need. And that is a place to go to look up all of the other services that they depend on, to have a better, more automated way of tracking their own software. And really kind of, maybe not finally, but it's rare that you get to the full DevOpsy idea of developers having a lot of ownership of their application in production. And so if you look at kind of like the intent behind Backstage as a project and the way that we're integrating it into the Tanzu application service, you can see that kind of appreciation and learning from the Cloud Foundry world kind of being injected, given over, to the Kubernetes world, which I think is great because that means that you can kind of start from a nice foundation that we've been working on in that world for quite some time. And there's still many organizations I talk with that, of course, enjoy the platform, the way of working that Cloud Foundry represents.
What kind of movements, trends, or, if you just look at from Tanzu's perspective, things that you see will be happening this year, which will also kind of, where the industry will be moving or ecosystems will be going. So talk about that.
I think what you see in what we're doing in the portfolio and also the work and the conversations I have with customers, and I've been tracking this in surveys a lot, is really understanding the multi-cloud needs that organizations have, right? And when I've been looking at that more, like it's not so much, it's not only just like I'm running in multiple places, but I think what I've been seeing not only, of course we do it the best way, but we in Tanzu and VMware as a whole focus on this. But how I'm starting to think about it is, how do I treat all of the cloud stuff out there in the services more or less as just my IT portfolio? And what do I need to use and manage all of that portfolio? Way back when we would call this heterogeneous systems management, which is hard to say, quite a tongue twister. But I think that's what I hear of more and more, is that organizations want the ability to manage and track all of that. And I think the reason they want that, I mean, this is a very operations perspective, is that as organizations are developing their software, their applications, what runs their business, right? They want to make sure that developers have two things. One, that they can use whatever interesting new tool they're most productive with. And two, developers are going to do that anyways. And so they want to make sure that developers don't go off and do it on their own in an unmanaged way. And which is always dangerous because, after a year or two, developers tend to move on to something new and exciting. And someone has to be left over managing all these multiple clouds. So it's better to give them a happy path to make the right thing easy.
Michael, thank you so much for taking time out today and, of course, share these insights and your predictions for this year. I would love to have you back on the show at the end of this year to, first of all, see how many of your predictions turn out to be true and then get set up prediction for next year. But I don't want to wait that long. I would love to have you back on the show before that as well to talk more about Tanzu and VMware. But I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Sounds great. That amount of accountability at the end of the year sounds scary. We'll have to see if that works out. But yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.